Petitioners residing abroad. Well, we're not worrying about petitioners filing abroad. What is the filing fee for form? Is $3.55. The check or money order must be drawn on a bank or other financial institution located in the United States and must be payable in U.S. currency. And make the check or money order payable to U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And you can use a personal check on this stuff. That's fine. Please spell out U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Do not use the initials USDHS or DHS. Why? Well, because they've had people working in the check cashing room. They get a name called, Don Harry Stanley, DHS, and they can cash the check, Don Henry Stanley. So by putting Department of Homeland Security, then it helps them keep the fraud out of their own company, their own government agency. How to check if the fees are correct. We've gone through that. You go through the website. When will a visa become available? Here's what I was talking about, that whole visa issue. Let's just touch on it again. It's so important to get this straight. When a petition is approved for the husband, wife, parent, or unmarried minor child of a U.S. citizen, these persons are classified as immediate relatives. There we go, immediate relatives. They do not have to wait for a visa number because immediate relatives are not subject to the immigrant visa limit. Okay, that says it all right there. For alien relatives in preference categories, the preference categories are the other relative relationships that are not immediate relatives. A limited number of immigrant visas are issued each year. The visas are processed in the order in which the petitions are properly filed and accepted by the USCIS. To be considered properly filed, a petition must be fully completed and signed, and the fee must be paid. For a monthly report on the dates when the immigrant visas are available, call the U.S. Department of State at 202-663-1541 or visit www.travel.state.gov. And on our procedures video, again, we go through all this stuff, but this is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life and you've married a permanent resident. Now when your permanent resident spouse becomes a citizen, then all of a sudden you are now an immediate relative. You're not a preference category spouse of a permanent resident. So even if you file that thing, you file your I-130, all right, and he's going to get his citizenship in a year, all right. You file it and you look on the Department of State website and you realize, oh man, I got a 6-year wait, spouse of a permanent resident. In a year, when he gets his citizenship, you don't have to wait that 6 years anymore. You can go right in and get your green card, file your I-485 as an immediate relative. But the I-130 would be actually a standalone application. That's what we're talking about. You would just file the I-130. Okay. Notice to persons filing for spouses if married less than 2 years. This is big. Check this out. We're talking about marriage fraud here. Listen to this. Pursuant to Section 216 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, your alien spouse may be granted conditional permanent resident status in the United States as of the date he or she is admitted or adjusted to status by a USCIS officer. Adjusted to conditional status, yeah. Both you and your conditional resident spouse are required to file Form I-751, joint petition to remove conditional basis of alien's permanent resident status during the 90-day period immediately before the second anniversary of the date your alien spouse was granted conditional permanent resident status. Why? Why? Marriage fraud. The answer, my friend, is marriage fraud. They figured that most people who do marriage fraud, you pay $10,000 for someone to marry and get a green card. Those people are crazy, all right, and the marriages don't last that long. It's like the worst thing to do to try to make them stay together for 2 years. And if they do stay together for 2 years, oftentimes they don't have bank accounts in each other's because they don't trust each other with the money. You know, the criminal mind, it always just implodes, right? You know, so these relationships, it's putting a 2-year requirement, saying you got to hang in there 2 years with that spouse or else you're not going to get your green card, was a way to combat the marriage fraud. Otherwise, the rights, privileges, responsibilities, and duties that apply to all other permanent residents apply equally to a conditional permanent resident. So you can travel in and out of the country as a conditional resident, you can work where you want to as a conditional resident, on and on. A conditional permanent resident is not limited to the right to apply for naturalization, file petitions on behalf of qualifying relatives, or reside permanently in the United States as an immigrant in accordance with our nation's immigration law. So you're not limited, you have all the rights as a regular permanent resident. But check this out. Note, failure to file the Form I-751 joint petition to remove the conditional basis of the alien spouse's permanent resident status will result in the termination of his or her permanent resident status and initiation of removal proceedings. And that is someplace you do not want to go. So this I-130, getting a green card based on marriage, all good, but if you blow it on the I-751, it's all for nothing. You're going to get deported. So very, 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 very important. When everything's done, the dust settles, you got your conditional green card, you're going to have to remove the conditions. The conditions are, we got to make sure these suckers stay married for 2 years so that they're not, you know, fraud. That's the condition. So it's very straightforward application, I-751. It's on this website. You can go it, read the instructions, get it all. And we also have a video tutorial on that too. Processing information. Acceptance. Any I-130 petition that is not properly signed or accompanied by the correct fee will be rejected with a notice that the petition is deficient. That's true. You may correct the deficiency and resubmit the petition. However, a rejected petition does not retain a filing date. Remember on a visa petition for a spouse of a permanent resident, you're going to get that filing date, and that gets you in line for the very, very, very long time. Well, if it gets kicked back, you lose that date. You have to get a new one, and it's going to be many, 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 many months in the future. A petition is not considered properly filed until accepted by the USCIS. Okay. And then initial processing. Once the petition has been accepted, it will be checked for completeness, including submission of the required initial evidence. If you do not completely fill out the form or file it without the required initial evidence, you will not establish a basis for eligibility, and USCIS may deny your petition. Boy, will they. Request for more information. We may request more information or evidence, or we may request that you appear at a USCIS office for an interview. Or we may also come visit you at your house to see that you have a real marriage. That's true too. We may also request that you submit the originals of any copy. We will return these originals when they are no longer needed. Yeah, they might. Most of the times they don't want to see the originals, but sometimes they will. If you give a real bad Xerox copy, they might say send the original. And then that delays your case and everything. It's a real drag. The decision on Form I-130 involves a determination of whether you've established eligibility for the requested benefit. You'll be notified of the decision in writing. All right. And then USCIS forms and information. Here's the toll-free number, and you can definitely get information from that. A lot of times you won't be able to get information until you get your receipt back. Usually you're going to file the I-130 with everything, all the 485s, all the other documents. You'll get these receipts back, and it'll have a tracking number on it. And when you call them, they'll always ask you for your tracking number. Also, you can go online and put on this website here, you can put in the tracking number, and it'll say if there's any problem with your application. Finally, you can use an InfoPass appointment to schedule an InfoPass where you show up in person at the immigration service, the local one close to your house, and you can go ahead and ask them in person what's going on with your case.